Hi everyone and welcome to week 6. I hope you are enjoying the class so far and enjoying your work with your student. We are getting closer and closer to the midway point, which is hard to believe. Please definitely email me if you have any feedback or if you have any needs. I am happy to accommodate and work with you and take that feedback to use. A couple of announcements. Congratulations on completing your first WEPR. Keep up the great work. They looked really awesome. Just a couple of reminders to please include a header with your name, the student's name, and the student's grade. It's nice to have that information in front of me while I'm doing that. Also, if you could consolidate it into as few files as possible, it makes the grading go a lot smoother the less files I have to upload and wait for. Also, make sure that you give the required assessment. So each week we are focused on one domain in particular, and there will be certain assessments that you will be required to give from the core usually, or the QRI book that you are using for this course, and then you will have the option to research and find a different assessment to give, or use the course materials to find another one. But please make sure you have those required assessments, and please make sure you submit all of your assessment artifacts, especially if there's a separate scoring sheet so I can see the actual teacher notation of the assessment and then how it was scored if there's a separate scoring sheet. Also use the sample assignment to help you better understand the expectations of the assignment. And then a note about interpretations. So I did notice a trend with the interpretations in that a lot of the information in the interpretation section wasn't really a concluding statement about the results and the data gathered. It was more of additional information pertaining to the student's participation level or their involvement, a lot of commentary about whether or not the student was engaged or fatigued or tired. And that information is good when you're thinking about the reliability of the results, but it's not really an interpretation. An interpretation is looking at all of the data collected from that assessment and then being able to draw conclusions about the student's strengths and needs in that area based on the information collected. And then lastly, don't forget to discuss the assessment limitations. That is a required part of this assignment, is that you're able to think critically about how this data might be restricted, and specifically using those terms of reliability and validity, going back to earlier in the course where I talked about the different types of validity: content validity, construct validity, consequential validity, all of those things. So those were some of the things I noticed after grading your first one, but overall really high quality work. There were some people citing some of the course texts and additional articles. Some people were bringing in information from the 516 course, really observing and noticing things about their student during the assessment session and making really high level interpretations based on those noticings. Definitely when you are presenting your data, be looking for trends. So example on that MRP, looking at what questions had the lowest scores, and is there anything similar, or is there any commonality or pattern or trend that you can find amongst all of those questions with the lowest scores. For instance, someone noticed that the questions with the lowest scores pertain to reading as a social event, whereas some of the value of reading questions that were more individual or independent had higher than those. So that was a significant finding that they made an interpretation about. So really this course is just developing you as a noticing teacher, looking at those results critically, looking for patterns and trends to be able to walk away with some very strong and well-supported conclusions. All right, enough about that. Let's move on to the week 6 readings. There are a number of them, but it's really not a lot of pages when you put it all together. First, in the informal assessment chapter from Lipson and Wixon, looking at informal assessments for word recognition. So those are the pages for the 4th edition, which is in chapter 8. And those are the pages from the 5th edition, which is in chapter 9. So keep in mind that you are only reading the pages that are about evaluating word recognition and decoding, since that is our focus of the week. Now, you also want to look in the structured assessment chapter as well, which is chapter 9 in the 4th edition or chapter 8 in the 5th edition, and also read about texts of phonics and word recognition in the structured chapter to get some ideas for assessments you may want to give. You are going to read the core, pages 41 through 72, so you can read about the core phonics survey. Definitely pay attention to the fine print and the directions for how you're supposed to administer this, when you're supposed to discontinue it, when you're supposed to start giving words and skip to the next line and all of that good stuff, because I will be looking at that as I score your artifacts for this week. There are a few articles. The first is Fry's new instant word list, and that is going to be one of your required assessments for this week. And then there's another article on miscue analysis, which might be something you opt to use this week as your additional assessment. Participation activity. So you have running record miscue analysis homework. There is a file titled running record homework. Please print that out prior to watching the bonus lecture, get excited, on running records. In that lecture, there's going to be some audio for you to do a guided practice, so to speak, and then there's also separate audio for the independent practice, and the independent practice is what you're going to submit on Titanium for a grade for your homework and participation activity this week. So definitely want to make sure you are very proficient with running records and feeling comfortable with that, because in a few weeks you're going to be giving the qualitative reading inventory where you're going to need to be very fluid and fluent in doing that process. All right, so other assignments due this week. We have the 3rd WAPR. We have the 2nd practicum video of one of the required assessments, and then again the miscue analysis homework. So those are the 3 pieces due this week. This is probably one of the heavier weeks. For your 3rd session, there are 3 assessments required. First is the core phonics survey. Second is Fry's instant word list taken from the article. And third is an additional assessment of your choice. This should be an informal assessment. Now keep in mind, the core phonics survey and the instant word list are words in isolation, and that is not really the most authentic practice, and it doesn't really involve the whole process of reading. So for your additional assessment, it might be a good idea to do words in context, since neither of those initial assessments are that. You do have a video due from this session, so keep that in mind when planning your session and thinking about what you want to record. There are many resources on Titanium, but I would definitely encourage you to think of doing a running record so you can see how the student does with word recognition of regular words and irregular words in context. Session 4 is going to be next week, and that's going to be focused on spelling and writing. So you'll be giving a spelling inventory for your structured assessment, and then a writing assessment of your choice for your informal assessment, and then you will need to give the QRI word list to prepare you for our last session with this younger student, which will be just the QRI. There will be no video due from session 4 because these assessments are pretty straightforward. One is a dictation and spelling, and the other one is writing. There's not a lot to video there, so no video due. A couple of reminders: you should be communicating with your group on your presentation. I did post some online collaboration tools that Lindsay Rutherford got to me to give you some ideas of ways to collaborate online. Week 7 is another busy week. You do have some readings there in Lipson and Wixon to prepare you for assessments related to spelling and writing. Also, the Words Their Way scoring guide you'll need to read, and a few pages out of the QRI-5 to get you ready for giving that word list. You're going to be doing your 4th practicum session next week, your 4th WAPR. The syllabus says we're doing a participation activity. I may revisit that next week because it seems like we've got a lot going on, but there will be no video guaranteed. All right, that's what we've got on the docket for this week and what's coming up for next week. Please let me know if anything was unclear or if you have questions, but you should be getting the hang of this into the routine of doing your sessions, doing your plan and your reflection, and submitting videos should be old hat by now. So have a great week. I hope you're all doing well, and I look forward to reading more about what you find out with your student.